Welcome to another edition of the Giants Huddle podcast, brought to you by Citizens, the official bank of the New York Football Giants. I am John Schmeelk, joined by a member of the family, former Giants punter, Jeff Feagles. Jeff,
Johnny,
it's good to see you, brother. How are you, man?
I'm doing great. So are you. You look great. Everybody's haven't been in the building in a while. So
I know. I haven't seen you in a while.
I think everybody went on diets before training camp this year. Everybody's kind of losing weight around here. It's awesome. You look great.
I appreciate it.
I haven't seen Totino yet, so maybe.
It's actually even a little early for Totino. Jeff is here. If you're coming to practice, well, this is going to be way after you. Well, Jeff's signing autographs at practice today. We're recording this just so people understand on Tuesday, July 30th. It might not air for a week or two, but we wanted to do some big picture Giant stuff with Jeff and just have some fun with him, as we haven't talked to him in a while. So
July 30th. That means training camp.
How's the business with the kids?
Everybody's busy. Housing business is crazy.
We miss you here.
The market is nuts. The boys, the family's doing well. Been so busy, I haven't been able to really dive into football yet, but it's exciting. I know that it's in my DNA that right around the end of July, you kind of know that it's football time, you know?
What does it do to your mind and body when you feel like training camp should be starting? I mean, you did it for what? How many years?
Too many, I guess. It was 22. 22 training camps consecutive, yeah. What goes through my mind is, you know what? It's funny because I got excited about training camp because all the stuff you do in the off season, you put in to get ready for the season, you get to show it off. So you could come out to camp where some guys lose weight, some guys get stronger, some guys do this and that. For me, it was just showing everybody as I got older that I can still do it at that age that I was, and that it's just competing, John. I mean, you hear about it from everybody, and it is a cliche that they use all the time, but as a player, you just want to go and compete. And every year they try to bring somebody in to take my job. And so that kind of got the juices flowing, you know?
It's funny. I'm sure the guys that aren't specialists here, you say, oh, I get excited for training camp. It's fun. They're like, screw that guy. Back in the day, you're doing 2 days.
Yeah, I was going to say a little bit different.
And you're like swimming in the pool up in Albany or like getting off the golf course trying to beat Mike Holmgren to breakfast.
I had it. Yeah, you know all the stories. I did have it pretty easy when it comes to that. But, you got to earn your stripes. I didn't have it easy at the beginning. I had to do everything else that, all the other guys were doing. But I think that as I got older, I got smarter. But listen, I think, and I'm not knocking this at all. I'm just saying, back when I played, things were so much different. I mean, we didn't know any better than 2-a-day practices, until finally everybody got smart and said, you don't need to do it. But, we were in training camp 6 weeks. 6 weeks. No. And that's legitimate 6 weeks. And listen, I 2-a-days and pads for me wasn't all that bad, but I mean, it was, there wasn't any like days off. It was just straight through. So, but listen, I think in today's game, as you know, it's all about safety. It's all about getting guys healthy. And this game is all about getting healthy and coming out of training camp and coming out of the preseason healthy.
I don't know if I've ever asked you this specific question, maybe because it's the position you play, but you saw the whole era, right? You were back in the day when there were no rules and you could do whatever you want. Then you had, the late 90s, early 2000s where you had some rules, but it was still 2-a-days, it was still pads.
Sure.
And then did you practice under the new CBA?
No.
You didn't, right?
No.
So
no.
Do you think, or did you see a drop-off in preparedness by players as they pulled back on some of this stuff?
Well, it's funny because I was kind of practicing. I was practicing the way the new CBA was because I only practiced once a day. So I innovated that, But no, I think that, and to answer your question, the changes I saw. Now remember, I retired in 2009, so there was a little bit of kind of that new indoctrination to how things were going. But that was with Tom. I mean, nothing was real easy with Tom. You know what I mean? So, but I think that the guys they're just as prepared today as they ever were because they're around here so much. I mean, the off-season program, remember this too, everything's about money. You know that in this business. And because the salary cap goes up, guys are able to get bonuses to work out in the off-season, which we didn't have that back when I played. So guys are getting paid to come in to work out. So you're basically paying them to get better, which back in the day, we just did it ourselves to get better. So I think that's kind of what you're seeing these days.
Interesting. How much, you mentioned Tom, how much did you see him pull back in camp in the offseason. You know, the whole, and I think personality-wise, Tom Coughlin did pull back a little bit in 2007. You can talk about that too. But just from a training camp offseason work, did you see an evolution even with Tom Coughlin while he was here? Or no, he was.
I think towards the end, I did. I mean, I played for Tom for 6 years. So the first 3.5, 4 were intense. And then after that, I think not only did Tom need to change, I think the league changed. I think things started to get a little bit, and people were understanding that this game is so physical that you can't continue to do things in the old way. And for us to play back in the day, that was just kind of uncustomary. Tom had to really, Tom, this was a struggle for him. But the players you had to take care of the players, and the players kind of rule the roost in a sense, So I think that things worked out for the better. And I think today, it would be very difficult to be a coach in this league. I just, personally think that just because my kids are older. I mean, we were talking about your kids this morning. My kids are 33 down to 24. So my kids are the kids that are here, or the player. That's the age group.
Actually, on the older side, believe it or not, which is kind of scary.
So I have a 24 and a 27 and a 30. So, those are, but my point is that the way that I see my sons grow up and what they're doing, I would find it very difficult to be a coach today here, because I feel like I'm calling my kids lazy, but I think that if the generation that I'm seeing and some of these kids, they become lazy and they just become complacent, and the money is ridiculous. So there's, people, it's when you get money, and by the way, the new guys coming in, they got paid.
They've already got
money.
In college, correct.
So I think that, that's a whole other segment where you can get into, like Howard, and not everybody's getting the amount of money that we're talking about, but I think it is to the point where these guys come from college and now they get here, it's not so exciting. Like, listen, I remember when I first came into the league and I got my first paycheck, it wasn't very much, but it was something. I mean, I was like, oh my God, I can buy gas, I can buy food. I mean, seriously. I wasn't one of the guys getting paid at Miami. Most of the other guys were, but I, at least coming out of college, at least I had some money. But now it's like, wow, these guys just, what do they do? To me, it's more, you better be smart with your money. You're going to make it, just be smart with it.
So Miami, like the wide receivers and quarterbacks got cars, like Lamborghinis.
Yeah, all that kind of stuff.
And you got Hot Wheels? Is that pretty much how it works?
I didn't even get Hot Wheels. I think I got a bike. I got a beach cruiser.
You still got a bike. That's not
but
bad.
It was my bike. I bought it.
Oh, okay. Well, then you didn't get anything. You bought the bike.
Anything. I had a bike.
All right. 2 more questions about the past before we start talking about current Giants and other stuff like that. I love chatting with you. This is so much fun. What made Tom particularly intense compared to prior coaches? And by the way, it's not like you played for these laissez-faire, fly by night. You played with Mike Holmgren and other guys that were pretty intense.
Buddy Ryan.
Yeah.
I mean,
my gosh, if I had Buddy Ryan. What made Tom different? And frankly, if you want to, what made all your coaches a little bit different? Because there are some big names there that I think people like to hear stories about.
If I compare the two, just going back to Seattle before I came here, with Mike Holmgren, I think Mike Holmgren had a bigger ego than Tom Coughlin. Tom, he has somewhat of an ego, but the fact is
we all have some type of ego.
Yeah, exactly. But I feel like Tom was real, and to this day, he's the same person.
He really is.
His work ethic, the way he does things, his expectations. I think this is the biggest thing. I know all football coaches have expectations for their players, but I don't know to an extent how far they go to create those expectations where the player understands that all Tom wanted to do was make you better. Constantly.
And by the way, not just as a football player, as a human
person,
being.
100%.
As someone that worked not in the football side, I felt pressure to do everything I did the right way, because I was afraid Tom would see me not. Like, even just standing around waiting for something to happen doing production, you would want to do it a certain way. So if Tom walked by and you were leaning against the fence or he would say something. That's what he would do.
You know this better than anybody, is that I feel like the head coach creates some the atmosphere in the building. And then that's what happens with the players. The players are kind of become their head coach, and that's what I'm talking about. He prepared people the way, because he was an example, and you lead by example. And some people lead by example. For instance, I'll give you an idea. Eli Manning, he wasn't a vocal leader. He led by example on the field, off the field, in the locker room, things like that. Tom led by example. You either are going to abide to what he's doing or you're not going to be there at all, because he's only trying to find people that are going to fit into his puzzle, that is going to collectively, as a group of 53 guys, might be more now, but just going forward, the fact is that you have to be on the same page as him. And if you're not, then you're gone. And now listen, that was tough at the beginning. You all, it's chronicled. Strahan will tell you he didn't like Tom Coughlin at first. Ooh. Nobody did. I had no problem with Tom because you know what? I'm like you. I'm a rule follower. I got no problem not wearing socks. I'll wear whatever it is. You can't wear white socks. Okay, I wear brown socks, black socks. Who cares? Just don't wear white. Do you know how hard it was for guys to do that? I mean, come on, guys, seriously. So, and then I think Tom finally, that was the part where he loosened up a little bit, and God bless Judy Coughlin, that Judy helped him get over that point. But to answer your question about Tom, is that he expected so much from you as an individual and as a football player, and he imposed his will on you constantly, and you know that because the building, everybody around him kind of reacted to it.
And by the way, that never leaves you.
No, 100%.
The way I approach everything in life now is the way Tom Coughlin kind of set the standard.
Good for you. Good for you. Because you know what? I have people. I mean, I played for a lot of coaches, and everybody always asks me, "Who was your favorite coach?" And every single time, Tom, because Tom taught me life skills.
He really did.
And believe me, as an older guy on the team when I was playing, I was in his office a lot, learning about life. Because you know what, Tom loved football, and I was coaching my younger kids in junior football. He was always asking me how the team's doing and things like that, just kind of get away from football a little bit from the professional side. But as a person, I mean, listen, I think if you could hang around someone like that, you're obviously going to be able to get some of the tendencies that he does, and it's going to bring it into your own life.
You're ready for a change. Payday comes early with Citizens, so go to that retreat. New you moves to the country. Now you're raising goats and launching a lifestyle brand. Are you ready for all that life brings?
How about Holmgren and Buddy Ryan? Give me some examples of kind of what made them different or special.
Well, Buddy was great because Buddy gave me Buddy really, and I'll do this quickly, he really gave me the opportunity to move on in my career because I got cut in New England after my second year, and Buddy hired me in Philly. But Buddy told me that I was going to be gone because this is when the injured reserves were different. Once you went on injured reserve, you had to be on there for 8 weeks. I know it's a little bit kind of like that now, and he said, you're going to be gone. After 8 weeks, John Telchik is coming back. So you need to do well and to try to get another job.
So you were brought in to replace somebody that was hurt.
Exactly.
I got you. I didn't know that.
So
okay.
he gave me a chance, and then I basically did so well that he didn't, John Telchik never came back to play.
Oh, poor John.
Poor John. Yeah. But he was intense. And by the way, the punting position, as you know, is a defensive player. And if you were a defensive player, Buddy loved you. So.
He must have not liked it if you did not punt the ball well.
No, he loved it when I put him inside, so as long as I did my job, just like anything else. So he was great to play for. Who was the other one?
Holmgren.
Oh. Okay, so he was a big man. He still is a big man. We called him the Big Show was his nickname because it was all about Mike Holmgren.
What is he about, like 6'3", 6'4"?
He's 6'5".
Is he really?
And he at that time he was pushing 290 pounds. I have not met him in person. The biggest man, just like, and so intimidating as a human being.
Like you see him on the sideline with like little mustache and everything, like you don't get that
intense.
feel.
But I felt like Tom and Holmgren was to the point where he was so consumed with the offense because that's what he was. They didn't really care about anything else.
For the folks that don't remember, he was with Brett Favre in Green Bay.
He was
West Coast offense.
He was very intense about winning. I mean, all head coaches are, but I mean to the point where he was but his ego was incredible. We pulled up to training camp one day and there was a picture of him on the side of the building, just imagine you're pulling in here and there's a 50-foot
table.
Yeah, right there. And
that's pretty funny.
And he said, underneath it said it's showtime. So that's why we call him the Big Show.
All right. Some people have probably heard this story, but it's one of my favorite ones. Tell them the Mike Holmgren at breakfast training camp story because I just love it.
It is training camp.
Yeah, I know. That's why I tell it.
And I'll do it quickly. We were in Spokane, Washington, and if you've ever been out on the Northwest, the sun comes up very early there, 4:30ish. So me and Foley. I was the first.
Axel? No, I know that.
Axel. Glenn Foley,
the quarterback.
big golfer. Long story short, we had the access to this golf course right by the training camp where we were at. So we would go at 5 o'clock in the morning, and we would go play 18 holes in about an hour and a half. We had 2 carts. Anyways, come back one day to training camp to go to. I got to check in. Everybody's got to eat, right? Well, I made the mistake of I grabbed the tray, and it's a little cafeteria. You put the tray down, you're grabbing your food, and Tom, I keep telling Tom, Holmgren comes in behind me. So he's got his tray, and he's done, and I have my golf glove in my back pocket accidentally. And he lifted up the golf glove and he put it on my tray, and he says, "So what'd you shoot today?" I was busted big time. My face just turned red. And I said immediately, "Oh, well, I beat Foley today." So I threw him under the bus too. I told him that. It wasn't going to just be me, And he said, "Well, where's Foley at?" I go, "I don't know. He's probably just went back and I have no idea." And he's like, "Well, you keep that between you and I," and put it back in my pocket. But listen, I told you, I only that's later in my career, So I was we went out and played golf, but it was nothing. Those are the days I weren't punting or anything like that. But it was a pretty funny story. But he caught me red-handed.
I should remember this. Who was your head coach in Arizona?
So when I first got there, it was Buddy.
Okay.
And then after he left, it was Vince Tobin, probably the worst head coaches I've ever had.
Why?
It wasn't you know how there are some coordinators that are just not good head coaches.
That was him.
That was him. Outstanding defensive coordinator, but just a horrible coach.
Just is it like overall leadership ability?
Yeah, he was just he wasn't a head coach. His leadership skills just weren't there. So
yeah. Okay.
And then of course when I went to Seattle after I left Arizona, it was Dennis Erickson for 1 year, and he was a lot of fun to play for.
Obviously you knew from
big time players coach. And
you knew him from Miami?
I knew him. I wasn't there when he was at Miami.
Right.
But yeah, the connection was there.
Football season is coming, and so is the next college semester. If you need funding, a Citizens student loan could help you pay for 100% of your school certified costs. Get your rate quote in about 2 minutes at citizensbank.com/payforcollege. I must admit, I did not prepare a "Did you play with Jeff Feagles?"
That's
today.
okay.
I'm just warning you ahead of time.
Thank you.
All right, so give me your thoughts on the Giants offseason and kind of where we are here heading into 2024.
I think it's exciting.
That's what it is.
I think it's exciting. I think that I think that from an offensive standpoint, I think that the Giants did what they needed to do. They went out and got some help at the offensive line position. You look at those names across the board. There are a lot of new ones there. So hopefully that'll help. And then you also have some guys that have been here that need to get healthy. That'll certainly help. I think Daniel Jones, another one that's gotten healthy. But you put a big play receiver on that field. I tell people all the time, they're like, "Well, what do you think about the Saquon thing?" I'm like, listen, I think that there was bigger things to do with this roster than to sign Saquon Barkley. That's my take on it. And I believe they got a playmaker. Saquon was the big playmaker on the offense. So now that he's gone, they replaced him with Neighbors, who I think is going to be in a lot of different situations. Just get the ball in his hands. And, you've been able to watch him out of practice. I haven't. I've only read about some things. He's special.
Enjoy watching him, dude. He's fun.
He's special, right? So I think that's going to be, as fans, it's going to be really a lot of fun to watch this guy. And, reminiscent of when Odell Beckham came in here. Everybody, listen, he's a big play guy, and that's certainly what we're looking for.
You know what's funny, Jeff? And you kind of just clicked it with me here. We've talked about this, all off season. You were with us back when the Giants drafted Barkley. You were doing shows with us, right?
Mm-hmm.
You remember the conversations we had. Is a running back worth taking second overall? And we had this conversation a bajillion freaking times over the offseason. And you know what? It's not debating whether or not you take a running back second overall, but you are debating when you're making that decision, all right, well, do you pay a running back $12 to $13 million a year, or do you take that $12 to $13 million a year and put it towards a guy like Brian Burns, right? It's the same type of conversation. It's about money. It's not about draft picks, but it's still about asset allocation. And I think Joe Shane came down to it that Saquon, great player, but A, running back position, and B, the other part of this too, is when you're talking about drafting Saquon Barkley, well, he's a 21-year-old that has a lot of tread on the tires. Well, now you're talking about asset allocation to a 27-year-old running back, who I think we've seen lose some juice.
Of course. Well, you have to
the
with
last
that.
couple
You know,
years.
running backs. That's yeah.
So I just think it's funny that it's the same kind of conversation just replaying itself with some different circumstances, 6-7 years later.
Big circumstances, in my opinion, though. I mean, bigger circumstances than when he was 21. Number one, he inevitably has a problem staying on the field. So when you're going to pay somebody, we know this, if you're going to pay somebody a lot of money, it's like, it's like if I'm going to pay a roofer to do my roof, and I know that he's pretty good, and he only does 3/4 of the roof every time. I mean, I want somebody that's going to do my roof 100% every time. I need him on the field all the time if I'm going to pay this kind of money. So it's hard to keep running backs on the field. They get beat up, just like middle linebackers, guys that hit like that all the time. So that's just the way of life it is. So I think that, defensively, I think some of that money got allocated, as you say, to free agency, pass rush. Okay, yeah, you got Thibodeau. He's coming into his own now. He's been in the league a couple years now. It takes a while for these guys to understand it, but Brian Burns is, he's a top 100 player in this league. I mean, he's going to be exciting to watch too. So those two players, I think Neighbors on offense and Brian Burns on defense are going to be something to watch.
You love turf. You're good at it. So you start a turf biz. Business grows, your savings grow. Become the most celebrated name in turf. Are you ready for all that life brings?
This year.
It's going to be fun. Now, you haven't watched Hard Knocks yet. I heavily recommend it. It's very good. You need to go back and do that.
I want to, and I'm probably going to just binge watch it all the way through when it's done.
Last one is tonight. So,
okay. All right. There you go. But it is interesting. I know people are watching, and of course I haven't, but I understand what's going on behind the scenes. As a player that played in this league for a long time and a guy that did my own contracts for a while, I get what all of this is about behind the doors. It's a business. And that's what the fans are finally seeing. And maybe it sheds a little light on things when you guys are talking about this stuff. People can now understand a little bit more like what we were talking about that they didn't understand, because it's kind of interesting.
So one thing that at the end of free agency, they show a scene in Hard Knocks. It doesn't spoil anything for you. I mean, you know what happens.
Yeah.
It's real life. But it's at the very end of free agency, and they kind of do most of their big moves. And Shane's in his office, and Brian Dable FaceTimes him, right? Because that's what Dave does. He FaceTimes everybody.
Uh-huh.
And, he sends him an old text exchange between the two, and Shane goes, you know what? Wow, look at that. At the start of free agency, and I forget the exact phrasing, but it was basically help the quarterback and then get the quarterback. Yeah. And it seems like that's really what this offseason was about, right? You talk about the new offensive lineman, whether it's Jermaine Illuminor or John Runyon Jr., adding Neighbors at wide receiver, Brian Burns on defense to get the quarterback. For you, as a guy that lived through an era of Giants football where it was all about protecting the quarterback, getting him weapons, bursts, et cetera, and then on the other side, getting after the quarterback with all the front guys, what's your reaction to seeing them kind of return to that basic build from, and I think Joe Shane has been trying to do this since he's been here, build from the inside out philosophy where you start at the ball at the line of scrimmage and then build out from there?
Listen, you've been covering it long enough to know that the rules don't change. You start from there. You start from inside and work out, right? And so I think that it's going to help tremendously, because if you can get after the quarterback, that helps your offense. And if your offense can move the ball, and even if they don't put points on the board, at least they give the defense a better chance on the field position where they're at. So I just think overall that's kind of just the way it's always been. Protect your quarterback and get after the quarterback on defense, and in the meantime, put little guys around you. You look at the receiver core that the Giants have. I mean, a lot of guys get lost in the mix here. You Hyatt and Wendell Robinson, these guys are like, they can play. And then you got Singletary, who's now the new running back. I mean, he's not going to be Saquon Barkley, but he knows the system, and he's a good guy out of the backfield. He's going to run the ball for you. But you know this, John, you can't just have one running back. You got to have a couple, So, and I think what's hurt this team in the past at those positions that we've talked about is depth. And I think as soon as this team starts to build their depth,
and I think they have on the offensive line,
100%, and that's hard. It's so hard to do. You can do it on paper. We've done it on paper. We built it through. We've done everything we can. But you know what? It's up to the guys to actually play and really just make us look good by what we did on paper. And it's not easy. And again, health comes into it. And because if you do not have good depth, because the attrition on the offensive line and defense, these guys get beat up. So you got to have good backups.
Big year for DJ.
Yeah.
What's your anticipation here? And considering what I think is the best wide receiver group he's had since he's been here, and you hope the best offensive line group he's had since he's been here.
I think arguably, I agree with you. I don't know how far back you can go. I mean, talk about building. This is year 3 for this this coaching staff, Shane and Dable. So, yeah, I think that they've got a lot of good pieces on the offense. But for Daniel, I think it's prove it. I mean, listen, we talk about all the money. We obviously know what happened in the draft and the whole quarterback thing and this and that. As a player, that motivates you. It really does. And look at the last time Daniel Jones was motivated. He had a pretty darn good season. He got a huge contract out of it. So I think for Daniel, if I'm Daniel, I'm saying to myself, okay, listen, they wanted to maybe try to get another quarterback. That's known. Second of all, if they don't want me anymore, I got to have a good year because I want to play more football. If they're going to get rid of me, I want to be able to go somewhere else. So, or why don't I just put it in everybody's face and come out and throw, for 25, 30 touchdowns, 6, 7 interceptions, and have a really super year. So make it tough on them to do something with me. That's what I would be.
Yeah, and
I mean, what else is there, right? I mean,
all you can do is play well, right?
And again, the position commands money, no matter what. If you don't have a good quarterback, you're not going to go anywhere. And good quarterbacks cost money, John. You know this, okay? So inevitably, you're going to have to pay the position. And by the way, the cap goes up every year. There's ways to circumvent it, and I think that they'll do fine. But just throw the money away for now. Like don't talk about money. Just talk about what he has to prove to himself and the organization and to the rest of the league. That's what, if I'm Daniel Jones, that's what I'm looking at.
We only got a couple minutes here. 2 things I want to ask you about. One, you've been around teams, and whether it's on them or covering them, where you get slow starts, right? And you come out of the gate, you lose a couple games.
0-2.
Right, correct. Throw on top of that, you mentioned this is year 3 of the regime. So you know what happens when you got guys going into the 30 years, head coaches and stuff like that, right? So how critical, and we talked about this a lot when you were hosting the show. I'm big on this.
Is this the new one?
This is the new schedule right here.
Okay.
How important is it to come out? It's taped down. Sorry, you're going to have to slide over. How important is it for this team to come out here, Jeff, and start fast to keep the good feelings good early so you don't try to dig yourself out of an early hole here, which you've seen this team have to do too many times over the years?
Here's the thing with the schedule and who we play. I mean, obviously, it's Minnesota. That's everything's on Minnesota, right? The media puts the pressure on.
100%.
The players have to put the pressure on themselves too, because they understand and it's fed to them by the media, social media, everything. So 0-2, only X amount of percentage teams make the playoff if you start 0-2. All this negative kind of just stuff going into these players. You got to let it go, and you just got to concentrate on one game at a time. However, confidence, just like anything in any position or any profession you're in, if you have that confidence coming out of it helps you down the line. So, but listen, I think that the players have to police themselves in the locker room. If you have that lost the first game and lost the second game, understand that there's still 15 games left, and a lot of people lose sight of that. And of course, the press just pounds it at you. So, and in today's world, how do you get away from it other than to throw your phone in the river somewhere? But you'll still hear about it.
Which I want to do sometimes, by the way.
I want to do every day, actually. It's just my phone. Yeah.
Jeff, it's great having another guy that's follically challenged on the show. I have way too many guys with these great heads of hair.
Yeah, you know what? One day they're gonna like it. Look at us. We get to wake up in the morning. We don't have to do our hair.
Doesn't do anything.
Yeah, and like we actually could not take a shower for a couple of days, and other than smelling, nobody would know, right? I mean, I don't have to do my hair.
I'd rather not walk around smelling, but yes.
No, I'm just kidding. So, yeah, but that's good. Thank you.
Jeff,
your hair looks great today,
I miss
John.
you, brother.
Yeah, good talking to you, Johnny. And thank you, everybody, for listening.
Yeah, thanks for being with us on Giants Huddle Podcast, brought to you by Citizens, the official bank of the Giants. I'm John Schmeelk. For Jeff Feagles, we'll see you next time, everybody.